Well, good afternoon. Sarah Perkins and with Lawyer's Title, and thank you for joining me today. It looks like live streaming is not working out for us on social, so we're just going to go ahead and do it old-fashioned and record it. So wanted to start off by talking about there's a lot of things happening in real estate right now. There's a lot of misinformation that's going around, a lot of things that I really want to make sure that we address and spend some time talking about. So we'll just dive right in. I want to make sure everybody's aware of, we know everything is tight inventory. And despite listings being down nearly 40% year over year, our inventory is actually creeping up a little bit, just a little bit. And it ultimately is a good thing. The intensity may go down a little bit, and instead of maybe every listing getting 15 offers, maybe they'll get 3 or 4. We're also seeing a slight or not a slight increase, but we're seeing an increase in overpriced listings, and they tend to just sit, which is really normal in quickly appreciating markets. People like to see how far they can press the limits and press the margins. And well, quite frankly, if you look at it, our median sales price right now is $325,000. We hadn't in 2020, the beginning of the year, we hadn't even ever crossed that 300,000 marker for the median sales price. And now we blew past it. We're at a 16% appreciation rate right now, which is just insane. It's just crazy. Not only, that 35% of all closings in August actually closed over asking, which, another reason why a lot of people are pushing the limit on their listings, because they're getting a lot of these offers. Some of the challenges there can be in appraisals. I know Amber's talked about appraisals. I'm going to kind of address that in a little bit. But that's also that keeps the appreciation under control, which ultimately is what we, kind of need. We don't want to have out of control appreciation. And right now, the appreciation at this speed is unsustainable. We know that. At some point, the buyers are going to just say, you know what, I'm not going to spend that. I'm out. And those are the times when it just naturally has that pushback. It's not unusual. It happens. And, so we'll see kind of some leveling out, but it'll be good if we have, an increase in inventory. It slows down the appreciation. It just takes us back to a healthier rate. Our buyers are happier because they're not fighting so many people for every listing, and the sellers are still in an appreciating market, and that's ultimately the goal. It may feel a little weird as we go through some of these transitions, but remember, if you're going 180 miles an hour, when you slow down to 120 miles an hour, you feel like you hit a brick wall, but you're still going 120 miles an hour. You just had gotten used to that 180. And so you got to keep in mind that this is a way to a healthier market, which is a good thing. One thing that's kind of standing out that's noticeable is that luxury real estate is booming. It's booming nationwide. We're feeling it here. We've got tons and tons of offers coming in, particularly on new builds over 700,000. People are really wanting, they get the high-end finishes and things like that, and they're selling, which is interesting because typically the second half of the year sells less than the first half of the year, but we know that this year has been very different than every other year, so our cycles just don't make sense the way they do in past years. We'll just kind of see how that shakes out. For our Arizona market, one thing that could be potentially leading to some impact is in California, there's a proposal for the millionaire tax, which essentially is income tax that on people who make over $1 million a year, and it would take them to about 16% tax on that income tax, and that's really high. Arizona's like 4%. So when you think about it, you can spend $160,000 in income taxes, or you can spend $40,000 on income taxes. So wouldn't be surprised if we see some people buying here, living here. This is their permanent residence or their primary residence, but they still commute back to Southern California or whatnot, because that's going to be super easy to do from here. And you know what? Hey, save you $120,000 a year. We'll see kind of what happens with that, and we'll just be watching it as always. And we have a lot of California people here anyway, so it makes sense that we'll just continue to get more. I wanted to spend some time today to talk a little bit about what is some of the conversations and questions I'm getting a lot, and it's about foreclosures and the boom, the bust, the things that we went through in the past. And people are having some PTSD, and they're a little nervous about what what's going to happen next, you know, when you are looking at some kinds of appreciation that we're facing. But here, let's do some kind of comparison. Let's really look at where we are in 2020 and where we were in, say, 2005-ish. In 05, lending was loose. I mean, we always, you know, you hear that, you know, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. I mean, really, like, if you were a human, you could get a loan. It was just crazy. People were lending 120% loan to value. They were buying houses with $0 out of pocket. It was, you know, people were over leveraged immediately. And today's lending requirements are very different. You know, the requirements are higher credit scores, minimum down payments, and a job. And so we know that there's a lot of things have changed, and that makes a huge difference. One thing we also want to make sure is our historic low interest rates are really driving up that demand. It's really having an impact on our market. And one thing Ivy Zellman with Zellman and Associates said is that, how do I say this? That basically, to the American consumer, low mortgage interest rates is going to be more important than an economic recession. Where if they can go save money and do a refinance or purchase or anything like that, they're going to do it because they can save us, you know, several $100s a month on their payments. And, you know, that's really making a big move in our marketplace. A lot of people are buying houses because they're so affordable with these low interest rates. In 2005, the average interest rate was like 6%. I mean, now if you tried to tell a buyer 6%, they'd have a heart attack. And then you also have to look at where our demand was, if it was just what was going on in that market. So in 2005, with those easy loans, yes, demand did increase quickly. However, demand actually started decreasing in April of 2005. The market didn't crash till 2008, but a lot of people thought that 05, 06 was just heavy demand, and it actually was not. And our inventory started increasing in June of 05. Demand hit bottom in October of 07, and our supply actually let's see, when did I say? Our supply hit its peak right at the beginning of 08. So, I mean, we had so many more listings, and the listings were increasing and the demand was decreasing. So if you think about it, when, you know, where we were in, you know, where they were in 05, especially as that demand started demand was decreasing, they essentially had like 7 buyers. Hold on. They basically had 7 buyers for 27 listings. So, you know, when you think about that, that's not a whole lot of listings, or not a whole lot of buyers to be able to, you know, satisfy with all those listings. But if you look at it where we are today, we have 10 buyers for every 3 listings. So again, that's supply and demand. We know what that does. It drives prices up. And so that's why we want to just have it, you know, maybe a little more supply, but we don't need to lose too much demand. And then we also can talk about that appreciation. In August of 05, our appreciation hit 45%. I just mentioned we hit 16%. So that's 3 times more. Now, a lot of things changed. We had some, you know, there was some collusion, there was some fraud, there was some crazy rules on appraisals. Today, you know, so in 2010, the guidelines changed. The appraisals got a whole lot tighter. So they're really not going to see those runaway appreciation anymore. And then you also have to look at what true demand versus false demand. What's interesting is when you look at, you know, kind of vacancy rates and how people were using their properties. Today, people are either living in them or renting them. These properties are full. People are in them. In 2005, people were buying houses just to park their money. They were just putting them in there and saying, hey, we're gonna make a ton of money on these, and then sell it with no intention of ever living in the houses. So even when you look at the vacancy rates, the U.S. Census Bureau actually shares it, our vacancy rates for properties in 05 was double what they are today, because people weren't living in the houses. Another way to also look at it is rents. So when you're in a normal appreciating market, rents and asking prices or sales prices for real estate kind of mirror each other. They go up together. You don't have one skyrocketing and one dropping, which is what we had in '05. Rents actually decreased in '05. Today, you know, Phoenix is known for having some of the highest rent increases in the country because we have so much demand. People need the places to live. What else? Let's talk about some of the, you know, so some of the other things though, as we want to talk about is, yeah, we do have some underlying challenges of today that there's a bunch of unknowns. We don't know what's going to happen, but we can still, based on the information that we have and the directions we're going, we can say, you know what, we're in the right direction at least. So our big one, we all know, unemployment. These unemployment rates are definitely intimidating. You want to think about where, you know, what does this mean? Are these unemployment rates going to dig in? We're going to see all these foreclosures. What could happen? And, you know, so you really have to start looking at what are we looking at with the unemployment? Roughly 22 million jobs have been lost, which is awful. We've already made up 10.5 million of those, which is, you know, it's great that we've already made up almost half, not quite there. And then you also have to look at who is unemployed, who has lost their jobs. And the majority of the people who have lost their jobs are renters. Now, the moratoriums on the rents and things like that and evictions, that's a whole nother can of worms that is actually very, very important, and we'll be addressing that and having to watch that, because what does that mean for the mom and pop investors, that they still have to pay their bills but the renters don't. So we want to make sure that there may be some sort of protections for these investors, but at this point we don't know what's going to happen in that arena, but we're watching it very closely. When we look at home ownership and homeowners, the vast majority of people who lost their jobs are under the age of 25. And according to NAR, only 3% of homeowners are under the age of 25. So showing again, most of them are going to be renters. So it's not going to be all these homes are going to be flooding the market. Besides that, people really have a lot of equity. So we don't know how much, of the loans that are in forbearance, it has gone down. We're at the lowest levels in 5 months. That, so it's about 7.16% of loans, which is roughly 3.6 million loans, are in forbearance. But we don't know how many of those are actually delinquent. There's a lot of things out there, but it is not public record. So there's a lot of speculation. And this is where I really want you to be careful in what you're reading and what you're talking about with your clients. Because I've read anywhere that 25 to 67% of loans in forbearance are actually still current. So, if we're looking at that, and even if it's 50% are still current, that takes off almost, of that 3.6 million, close to 2 million loans are current. So we're not going to be, having those guys go into foreclosure. And people have so much equity. The average American has $177,000 in equity. So they're not going to foreclose because you don't want to just throw away that money. That's hard-earned money. So there's a lot of things that we just need to keep watching to see what happens. Don't jump to conclusions that we're going to have a big foreclosure crisis. Now, yes, there are going to be people who do lose their homes. And that goes back to the misinformation. The other day I was talking to one of my clients, and she's like, hey, this guy, he said, he's 70 years old. He has a ton of equity in his house, but he said, hey, he's just going to, take the forbearance and save some money while he doesn't have to make his payments. And, there's a lot of different forbearance programs, but you know what? We're like, we don't want him to lose his house. We really think that, if he is properly educated about what his forbearance options are, maybe he would be taking the time to question whether that's a good idea or not, because some of the forbearance options say, whatever you miss plus extra, interest or penalties, that's all due at the end of the forbearance period. So again, we just need to sit and watch this. Now, one thing I want to point out, if we have 3.6 million loans in forbearance right now, that is a lot. It's a big number. But if we think about all of the foreclosures that happened in 2008 from 2010, 8.8 million homes were foreclosed on in 2008 to 2010. I mean, that's huge. It's just such a big number. And then, the last question is, okay, are we going to have a resurgence? What does that look like? What is the winter going to be with the flu season? We just don't know. And another thing that Ivy Zellman said, and I really like, she called it, is our home is our castle, more so than ever before. So if we are living, working, and teaching our kids at home, home is going to remain at the forefront of our mind. It's going to be super important. And as long as the interest rates are low, which they, every plan is to keep them there. Chairman Powell was talking about keeping those rates low. So as long as the rates are low and people are spending a lot of time at home, they're going to be looking and evaluating, what does home mean to me? Do I need more space? Do I need to go, have a place with a pool or anything, extra bedrooms? So we're going to likely, and so what Ivy Zellman's saying is we're likely going to continue seeing intensity in our marketplace until there's a widely used vaccine, regular life resumed, we're out of our houses more, and then maybe real estate will be less of the focus of our lives, and it'll just maybe not be so intense and just kind of step back and calm down a little bit. But until then, home is the focus. And so nobody really sees any of that changing anytime soon. And, keep in mind, we're watching this. So if you have any questions, I'd love to visit with you more about it, or talk about different scenarios and what, the potential realities that we're facing. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.